And
But Odie, hold on a second. There's got to be a time when you go up to the judge, put your arms around him like a godfather, and kind of slip in a 40% discount of field suspension in his pocket and pat him on the back of the head and say, "I love you," and walk off, right?
Yeah. We had a running joke that, hey, who sends them the best edible arrangement is going to get the win. So.
Odi Bakchis joining us here in the Freak Nation, your winner from Worldwide Technology Raceway's Formula D event last weekend here in the Freak Nation. And your travels on that big fat airplane or 2 or 3, which was more gnarly, that or that final win to win in St. Louis last Saturday, Odie?
At least I was in control of that win and my driving and the team's performance. So that felt a lot better than sitting on a plane like a freaking duck and just waiting on the runway. So, but anyway, flying's just a byproduct of running a, informed drift and having to bounce around all over the country. I'm just glad to be back at home, and the cars are on the way back home to get a proper service.
Well, what's awesome about, and if you do research on Odie, you find out that this guy just doesn't hop in a car, get out of the car, and hop on a plane. This guy's got his hands and feet and mind in so many aspects of Formula D, drifting, and automotive aftermarket that it can be a little mind-boggling for you at times to be able to compartmentalize it. Oh, I got to go drive now, right?
Yeah, certainly. 2011, I stepped into Formula Drift and got my pro license, and I was all gung-ho about it. And that was me, one-man team. I had a group of friends, and now it's turned into something a lot more than that. I own a 3-car team. I am just one of the drivers out of the 3. And on top of that, I run an aftermarket suspension company called Field Suspension. We manufacture shocks, not just for drift cars, road race cars. We used to manufacture them for rally cars, road cars, and the two businesses, obviously mesh together. Field race team, it's our race team. But there's a lot. Yeah, I wear a lot of hats, and bounce around from one of our businesses to the other, and have employees that work in one business strictly, and then the other one. And I try to keep everything cohesive and try to have everything come back to, just being more competitive in Formula Drift, and at the same time taking care of my family and making sure that all my employees have a great place to work, and my family's taken care of, and my kids can grow and live comfortably. So definitely a lot.
Odi Bakchis joining us in the Freak Nation, Formula Drift winner from Worldwide Technology Raceway just last weekend. And you talk about hoping to keep things cohesive. Right now, we're talking to you at a very cohesive time. You're coming off a win. You actually had all 3 of your cars on the podium in the St. Louis race, the St. Louis event. But it's not always like that. How are you able to balance things when, let's say, the business side of things are getting pretty challenging, yet you got to hop in the cockpit and make things work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, when I get to hop in the car and focus on the driving, it's an escape, right? Away from, like you said, if business isn't going well. And that's what keeps me going. But at the same time, I keep reminding myself, me jumping in the car at this point in my career is helping the businesses grow as well. It's good marketing for them. And you just got to switch from one thing to the other. And, it's challenging. There's no doubt about that. But I enjoy it, man. It's what gets me out of bed is having to juggle these things.
You truly wouldn't want it any other way, I would imagine.
No, I mean, I've been very fortunate that I've been kind of living in the moment, honestly, like deciding to build a brand new pro car and having my wife be also a business partner in our businesses, and her going, you know what, that gets you out of bed. Let's freaking do it. And here we are, like, with only months to spare, and we're deciding to do this. We're truly living in the moment, and that's a fun stage in my life, and we're just enjoying the fruits of our labor.
Okay, you talk about living in the moment. Do your kids get involved as well? Because there's sometimes, Kenny and I are married, just for those who don't know, Kenny and I are married. We have a daughter, and we were at the NHRA Bandamere race last weekend, and she was working a camera. I'm just going to be completely honest.
Nice. That's great to hear that your kids are involved like that, because that's what gets me to, that's what allows me to do this, is that I do involve my family. From Formula Drift Round 2 in Georgia, we lived in our RV, in our rig. Basically, we detached it from our 3-car hauler. We detached our toter home, and then me and my kids and my wife, we camped. We hung out in Georgia, and then also in Florida, all the way into Round 3, and it was the greatest thing ever. Just hanging out with our kids and having them at the racetrack during setup, during teardown, in between, enjoying the moments of winning, and then even down to our lows, having our kids there to, at the end of the day, like, that's what really matters. And having them around is just allows you to get through the lows and really, really enjoy the highs as well.
Wow. Odi Bakchis. I got to admit to being a fan, dude, but you just dropped something on me there. Guy from Lithuania who lives in the high desert of California, camping in Georgia. That must have been a significant experience for all concerned.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for Georgia, man. I love the South, and Georgia is such a beautiful place to be. So I take every opportunity to spend some time there, and my kids love it too. So it's fun, man. We bounce around. We're going to Europe right after Formula Drift Round 6, and we're gonna have a great time there as well. So we're going there to visit some clients for drifting, but hey, bring the family along and have fun and live in the moment. So
wow,
we try to make a pattern out of it, is what I'm trying to say.
A global business. Rallying pops up in the history of field suspension, and I want to ask a delicate question here. Rallying and drifting have at least one thing in common, where there are people who use very old cars and they build them up. And I was told once by a very successful rally guy who said that Americans don't understand that the shell of the car is part of the suspension that could be replaced. It's not something that should be used. I know people that are using 25-year-old cars in both series. As a wizard in suspension, where do you stand on that kind of idea?
Yeah, there's some validity to that for sure. And in drifting, the rigidity of the unibody chassis is playing a pretty big role in the way the car feels. Like, you can build, I campaign Nissan 240 SX chassis. They're very lightweight, old Japanese vehicles. There's various degrees of how rigid they are depending on what kind of life they had before I get my hands on them. And building several S chassis, that's what we call them, the 240 SX vehicles, an S chassis, that's the chassis code. I've noticed that they behave slightly differently, even if the build is pretty much the same. So the chassis being flexible versus being rigid, yeah, it changes the dynamics of the car a little bit. Luckily, with shock technology these days, you can really alter the way the car feels quite a bit, and the chassis flex becomes less significant. But that's a huge element. If people are building identical vehicles and then they're scratching their head why they don't have the same dynamics on the track, it's because the chassis flexes at a different rate. So yeah, rally cars, they obviously get beat way harder, way faster. The lifespan's way shorter, so that comes into play even more.
All right. I see in your notes that you are an avid traveler. That means that you probably are an avid listener of music, because you've heard so much from Eastern Europe to Southern America. What's on your playlist? What kind of music do you listen to, and what do you use to get ready for an event?
It's a little bit of everything, honestly. The only thing I'd say is not on there is country music. Sorry to disappoint the country music fans.
That's good for me.
I got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you hear me listening to country music, check in with me. There's something really going wrong awry in my life. So, but no, I grew up listening to punk rock, so old AFI, MGMT is kind of like the more mellow stuff, like indie rock, and then it gets into as much as like electronic music here and there as well. It's really what I'm in the mood for. And sometimes this last round at Formula Drift, I actually ended up listening to some really mellow music in my car that you wouldn't think that would get you hyped up at all, but it just worked. I think
all right, so let me interrupt you here a minute, because this just came to mind. Field Suspension is your company, a global brand. If you were going to put Field Suspension to music,
Oh boy,
what would you pull out of the speakers to say this is Field Suspension?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know, probably like electronic music, because it adheres to a beat, right? And it's like dependable. Like you could predict the beat, and that's what we built Field Suspension to give drivers confidence. In order to do that, it's got to be repeatable. So there you go.
That was a great answer. to be repeatable, to be reliable, to be constant. Whoa, well done.
Yeah, that's why I'm a fan. I told you I was a fan at the very beginning.
right?
I watched you when you were with another tire company that we won't mention here, but you were learning and banging walls, and now you're not. Congratulations.
Hey, it still happens, man. It still happens. That's a rough part about drifting. The amount of K-rails that are around all these race circuits is insane. My dad actually helps a lot with the body work on the cars. He repairs some of the carbon Kevlar panels and stuff that we have, and he's just like, why are there so many K-rails? This is so expensive, like causing so much damage. So as good of a driver as you are, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you get pitted into a wall by another driver, even though you just on it. So
Well, no, hold on. I get that, but isn't that that's just part of drifting? Granted, if someone pins you against the wall, there's not much you can do about it, but getting close to that wall is part of the art.
It is.
Right?
And we have screws loose in our head as drifters. You could put us in a bare, empty parking lot, and we'll find that fence or that guardrail somewhere, and out of the 5-acre parking lot, we'll be grazing that, because we're just programmed to show that we can get the cars close to it. And there's a feeling inside the car that you just know, like, wow, I'm right on some sort of barrier. That's exactly where I need to be. And that's definitely a part of drifting. You're very right about that. And it started at some point to be that way, and now we can't get away from it.
Odi Bakchis joining us here in the Freak Nation. Your winner from St. Louis, Worldwide Technology Raceway, friends of the Freaks, by the way. Top 3 in points as we speak. You've got the Western road trip coming up, where you're going to end the series again in the house that Drift built, Irwindale Speedway. We were there for the original race. It feels like 40 years ago. It's probably 25 years ago. But given where Formula Drift is at this point, have you guys established a good guy and a bad guy and some just gnarly rivalries, or do you guys break bread after the race and hug?
I think it's changing. It's always kind of a ebb and flow. Like there's guys that were the underdog and everyone was kind of rooting and cheering for, and they kind of were quiet, right? And then that shifts sometimes. They become the guy that's leading the points at any given time, or the guy that's on the heels of the points leader. And, it seems like if you're winning, if you're doing well, sometimes you might become a little bit of the antagonist here and there. And it's a reminder that, hey, like you're on the spotlight, you're doing well. So it's fun though. Like, we get emotional when our helmets are on, the visors down, and, things don't happen the way we expect them to happen on the track with other drivers. We get kind of in the moment, and we get aggressive. But at the end of the day, we all recognize that we're at a level where emotions run high, but then after the event, we realize that, look, whatever happened, I would have done the same thing most likely as the other driver. And we put that aside, and, we acknowledge that, like, we're all here to win, and sometimes things just get crazy.
Who calls you Armus at home? It's your wife when she's pissed off at you? Your kids, again, Kenneth for me is the go-to for my mom. Kenneth!
That's when you know you're in trouble, man.
Yeah.
My wife does it, I think, to just be cute, to just kind of poke and get my attention in a different way. Obviously, my parents do. My parents speak Lithuanian. I speak Lithuanian to my parents, to my grandparents, to my cousins. All of my family, came from Lithuania. So anyone outside of my wife or, anyone outside of my work calls me Odimus. That's kind of very common for me to hear.
Well, so, yeah, again, Kenny, that goes to your point. We Americans are lazy. Abbreviate it.
Bam.
Dang Americans.
It's a tough one to pronounce. It's Odi's. I feel like I'm burdening people so bad when they read like some sort of document that's got my name and they're just trying to say it. I feel like, hey, just use Odi.
Listen, you love the South. Odi's very close to Opie. And
there you go.
Right.
No.
Come on.
No.
Well, look, man, we're with us being on MAV TV and of course the Freak Radio Network. We're happy to have you in here. It's badass that MAV TV is the home for Formula D. You're getting a whole lot of eyeballs that had no idea, my friend.
Absolutely. I'm so stoked on MAV TV showing drifting. I think it's so fitting too. The sport is unique, and MAV TV has so many unique motorsports on there. It's a pleasure to get introduced to different types of motorsports when you click it on. So I am absolutely thrilled on that. You're right. And we have people like our neighbors that are like, hey, I just saw Odi on MAV TV. So nice. It's working. So it's great.
It's badass.
Wow.
See there?
Wow. See, and the Freaks, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kenny, but the Freaks have been fans of Formula Drift even before it was Formula Drift. I remember having a conversation with Jim Lau at Irwindale when he was taking some stuff in and out of his SUV, telling us about how he was going to create Formula Drift. This was before it even started. So we've known about this for a long while and have been fans for a long while. And it's a good thing that I've had sports car team owners tell me that they take a Formula Drift driver over a lot of the guys who are out there because they're disciplined behind the wheel.
That's great to hear, man. I think drifting is one of the toughest forms of driving. It was humbling, honestly. I drove rally cars for a couple of years, just for fun. Like we did regional events and we did a few like national level events in a two-wheel drive, front-wheel drive vehicle. I was very like cozy at slip angle in the dirt. It was easy, like not easy to be fast and win every time, but like to get into slip angle and maintain it, it was doable. And then I bought a rear-wheel drive car to drift because I thought it was the funnest freaking thing ever, and it was so humbling, man. I was terrible the first couple of times I went out. So after doing road racing, rally driving, I grew up riding motocross too, so I was always on something with an engine. And then hopping into a rear-wheel drive car on pavement on decently sticky tires and trying to keep slip angle everywhere and be in complete control through a road course was really challenging. So I'm glad you're finding other team owners saying, hey, we would pick a drifter to hop in our car and race.
It's badass, man. Freak Nation, good to get him in here. Probably not the last time he'll be here in the Freak Nation. Again, that Western swing kind of in your backyard, man. So don't screw up in Washington. And, of course, the house that Drift built there in Irwindale.
Wait, hold on, though. Has there been a different winner of every event? This season is full of parity.
That's an interesting statistic. I will definitely look at that. But I have a good feeling that there's been a different winner every single round. Yeah,
it just came to mind because this whole interview we've been talking about, well, a variety of things, but one thing that crept in there was different competition and how, different techniques. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think there's been a different winner every single round. And so, yeah, when Kenny talks about this West Coast swing coming up, it's like anything can happen. Anything's already happened in the East.
Yeah, that is drifting. Anything can happen. There's so much. Okay, we have such a short amount of time on track to shine, like 20 seconds on average per run, and we're critiqued so closely by judges, and there's replays and different camera angles. Like if you twitch behind the wheel, like it'll be evident on the outside of the wheel or outside of the car. So anything could go wrong, and that's where you see sometimes such a different stack up on the podium, because one little thing could take a really good seasoned driver out, and someone that doesn't normally get on the box might just put it together very well and beat everyone. So it's tough. I think I've been doing this for 13 years, and this last win in St. Louis was my 10th win, and that's like a huge milestone for me. I've been hanging on to that 9th win, looking to getting the 10th one for so long. I think 2021 was the last time I won an event. Been on the podium many times since then, but it's what I'm getting at is it's really tough to consistently win in Formula Drift. There's a lot of variables. So when you get those wins, it's super sweet.
I just thinking about this with the Women's World Cup underway. Soccer uses VAR for reviews. You've got artificial intelligence. You guys have judges, the old school way of actual human beings judging your runs. Do you see that evolving into a computer type judgment moving forward for drift?
At this point, I wouldn't say it's necessarily evolution, because there's other series, like in Japan, D1 uses a system called DOS. It's a computer system that judges your driving style. Ends up being quite different, because now you're trying to appease the computer. So you realize like how to transition the car, how to hold angle, how to burst into speed. You basically tailor your driving around appeasing this computer box to give you the highest score. And that is not necessarily the better way to run a drifting series. It's just a different way. So it's been happening for many, many years. I had a chance to drive in Japan and use that system, and it was interesting to try to learn it. So I don't think the evolution of drifting is going to be moving to electronics. I think the evolution of drifting is moving to electronic aids, but not necessarily using those to be the end and final judge. And Formula Drift is doing a great job of having computer aided technology, basically, or technology to help the judges, because now in the event that there's a collision and the judges have to assess fault, if it's driver A or B, there's actual telemetry data on the vehicles that have live feed going to our windshield. There's a deceleration light, acceleration light. You can see a green light basically illuminating, which means we're accelerating. They have an algorithm that they don't necessarily share with the drivers, so we don't really know, how to trick it, but it illuminates a different color as we start slowing down a certain amount. Things like that's where the future of the sport is heading, to give the judges more tools to make the proper decisions. And FD's Formula Drift is on that. So it's really good to be a part of the series that's pushing the envelope and making sure that the sport's fair, transparent, and ultimately, hopefully, the fans understand it better and better.
Are there times that well, first of all, do you know who the judges are every race weekend?
Yeah, we do. They're rotating. This year is a little different. Before, it was always the same 3 judges. The only thing that would differ round to round is that the same 3 judges would pick a different criteria to judge you on. So one would do style, the other one would be angle, the other one would be line. Now we actually have 4 judges, so only 3 judge at a time. So the 4th one basically rotates out every single round. But we're told in the drivers' meeting, who the judges are, and the judges give us expectations during the drivers' meeting, like, hey, we expect you to do A, B, and C on this course, and we just got to do it. We got to drive the way they want us to drive. Sometimes we would prefer to drive differently. Sometimes we prefer to take a slightly different line, but that's not what we're here to do. We're here to demonstrate that we can put the car exactly where the judges want, and we could accelerate and decelerate the car exactly where the judges want. And that's,
Odie, hold on a second. There's got to be a time when you go up to the judge, put your arms around him like a godfather, and kind of slip in a 40% discount of field suspension in his pocket and pat him on the back of the head and say, "I love you," and walk off, right?
Yeah. We had a running joke that, hey, who sends them the best edible arrangement is going to get the win. So, no, man, those guys do a killer job, and they, they're human. Everyone, there's human error, but I think they have the shittiest job, and that's just what it is. And they do a damn good job fulfilling that criteria of being a judge. It's a really, really tough job. I could tell those guys get stressed out, man. Like middle of the event, if you ever see them step out and just take a breather, like you could tell, like they're burdened with a lot. Like all of our teams are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and play. And they, I think, feel that like, hey, look, they got to do a good job to make the right call. There's just a lot of stake.
Buddy, this is awesome, man. Odi Bakchis is joining us here in the Freak Nation again. Winner from Worldwide Technology Raceway Formula D last Saturday night. We chased him Sunday night through many different airports. We got him in for this Sunday night. And again, you can see the series live on MAV TV, Freak Nation. Buddy, good to meet you. Thanks for doing this. All right.
Yeah, thank you for having us, man. Thank you guys very much. And thanks for promoting our sport.